anyway, this friend of mine, he's a Vietnam vet. Really love the guy. He's just such a great storyteller. And he told me this story of a logging camp. And I know logging camps might not seem relevant, but they are because, you have the logging culture and the railroad culture kind of goes hand in hand. At least it does up here in the Pacific Northwest historically. And anyway, you picture the scene like the log booms, they start at the camp and they go up the coast like, and that, the log boom is the bank account of the logger. Like they work their butts off and all the logs get sorted there and then, they get scaled out, and, I mean, that's where their income, right? So when those logs are sitting on the chuck tied up there, like they're kind of a protected asset, right? I mean, they have to be. That's where they get their paycheck from. So anyway, there's this, the usual camp boss kind of lumberjack guy, right? Anyway, he's in this little shack there, overlooking the booms, like anyway, so one day I guess this beautiful yacht, with the flag fluttering in the wind comes cruising in on a late afternoon. Cruise, right? And these people decide to tie off on the log boom and set up their Weber barbecue, on the boom with all their, nice little lawn chairs, and their pencil thin, champagne glasses clinking. You can picture the scene, right? Well, anyway, Buddy, the cow boss sees this plume of smoke, from the grease of the 1 inch steak sizzling on the grill. So he goes walking out there. You can sort of walk onto the boom, I guess, from the dock or the shore. And he goes walking out on the boom, this big 230 plus pound logger with, the plaid jacket and the big greasy cork boots. And he walks right up and just sort of nods in acknowledgement, just punts the barbecue right into the chuck. And all these people, they just went silent, with like deer caught in the headlights. And he turns around and shrugs and goes, "Have a nice day," and walks away. Meanwhile, these people, as he looks over his shoulder, they're scampering about, getting onto their yacht, and off they go, into the evening light, right? Never to be seen again. So let me just show you this building first before I remove it, because I don't think anybody has seen this. Like underneath, like this was the first building I built actually for this layout, because when I laid the track down, I just laid the track plan down first. I didn't even have any idea what I was going to do for buildings actually. I just winged it. And then I had this scrap plastic. It wasn't like evergreen plastic. It was just cut out pieces from a big roll that I had, and it was sort of a little bit had a warp to it. So what I did was, I framed. I just had some cedar 1/4 inch strip that I had ripped on the table saw, and then I framed it, and just to stop it from warping. Right, like that's the one thing about evergreen plastic or any styrene. Like if you get into larger areas, like it helps to to beef it up, frame it up so that it stays rigid. So yeah, so we'll just take this out of here then, and then deal with this area. So what I did here was, is I basically penciled off this area. So I'm gonna add, so I'm just gonna add glue along here. This is just carpenter's glue, right? Diluted with, it's probably about 50-50. Well, maybe 60% glue and water. I love this stuff. All this scenery's been done this way pretty much. Just carpenter's glue, that's all it is. Yeah. So, and some in here. Let me show you this. Like, look how they have this, right? It's like, it looks like a grandstand. Like, I'm sure all the money's in the packaging, right? So you open it up, right? Woodland scenics, right? And then, I mean, look at all that gets thrown out, right? Anyway, so they have this sort of grandstand. Look at Anyway, they even got a little drawster in here, you know, where you pull it off, you know, like, oh my goodness, how easy can they make it, right? You know what I mean? Like you grab the thread, you know, and it pulls off, you know. Anyway, it's got sticky tape on it, but obviously I'm going to glue it as well. So I'm just going to lay this in here like this. That's all I'm going to do. I guess I could pull that down a bit more. I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so before that glue sets up, I'm just going to do a dry run here. Make sure it, you know, fits in there good. I can move it around, see. I'll cut that away from the door there. Maybe I can run that piece. Run that piece in there like that, and then I'll just add some other stuff around there. But that way I can, excuse me, I can still lift the, you know, the building out, right? Okay, so I basically have this area, you know, framed in with the weeds and grass around the edge of the building. I'll clean up the edges a little bit more with some, maybe some, just some static grass there. I don't want to waste, you know, these tufts, because I want to visit this area right here. Let me just zoom in a bit. Like this area here is a little bit sort of a swampy area, as you may notice. And so this area here I never did quite finish. So I want to add more of this kind of look right around here. I really like this. And I'm going to fill this area in, and maybe a little bit around here and some over here as well. Just to kind of, I really want this area to suggest a lot of moisture, sort of. It's a flat area where, especially out here, you get a lot of flooding and stuff. Like not heavy flooding, but you know, areas where there's a lot of water. So this kind of green growth would suggest that. Okay, so here's another angle for you. You know, I just want to say that actually this scenery part here, it's probably one of my favorite aspects of the hobby. You know, let me just mention about this area right here. Like, see this static grass here? Like, as some of you may or may not know, like I do have a static grass applicator, and they are nice to have if you're doing that kind of a look. But all this area that you see here, that I didn't use a static grass applicator. Just like the smaller static grass, one of the tricks you can do is we just spread glue like this, right? Like if you don't have one, just spread glue like this, right? You know, fairly liberal amount. And then just take your 4 mil and just sprinkle it on by hand, like quite a bit, right? And then just take a vacuum, take all the attachments off the end so you just have the tube, and just come at it like this and just go over top, like come down with the vacuum on, and it'll pull all the grass up, and it'll pull loose stuff away. Obviously it might seem a bit wasteful, but if you're doing small areas, it's okay. Okay, so since we're on the topic of tufts, you know, um, like I just stumbled across these. They're by Vallejo, you know, the same company, I guess, that makes those paints, you know. Geesh. And this one pack will go a long ways. You can do a large area because you don't cover the whole area. And I'm starting to tease a few of them into this area here. You know, I want to build this up with another level of texture, you know. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate here is how I feather this built up texture or ground cover. There's three types of tufts in here with some static grass underneath from a layer before, but don't worry about that. But anyway, there's some real fine stuff. You can sort of see it here. What I want to do is I want to just put a little bit of glue along the edge of this tuft border, just to provide a smaller scale grass that would creep out from here, just to help this transition from the ballast and so on. Plus, it would probably go right into the ballast here in places anyway. I mean, some of these lines would have been maintained with weed killer and stuff. I'd sort of leave in this center like that, but there's so much track out here that this is the way it looks. Like some areas are maintained, some more on one side, some on the other. I mean, there's so many random factors, you know, like we can't be hard and fast on one rule here. So I'll show you how I do that. So I take this glue again, 60-40 or so, or 50-50, and I just want to build up a little bit, just soak it down along the edge here. Because what I'm going to do is once the little 2 mil static grass is laid in here, I'm going to spray it with earth. I'm going to cut it in with the airbrush. You know, the whole idea of you know, the smaller footprint, like I'd mentioned earlier, about how you get, you know, not instant gratification, but pretty close. Like you actually, can you imagine seeing a large railroad like after 20 years completing it? Like, I don't mean finished, because they never really are in that sense. But let's use the, you know, that term properly here. Like it doesn't, like it's not an excuse to not do anything. But if you're into the plywood Pacific and just operations, well then that's fine. You know, somebody mentioned on a comment there, and it's not to slight them. I thought it was a really good comment. Was they said something? Well, I don't know if it was cryptic or what they meant by it, but they said, "Okay, so you got a 12-inch or foot-and-a-half long locomotive on a city block, you know, layout. What's the point of that? You know, unquote." Okay, well, I'm not really sure what they meant by that, but maybe they have a large layout and they're feeling, you know, opinionated about that, or maybe feeling, you know, I don't know what they're feeling. You know, we all get that anxiety when we overdo something, when we take on a project too large. You know, maybe that person's coming from that angle. Well, I got a larger layout. You know, why do you, you know, why should I have a small layout? Or why would you have a, you know, a 6-axle -9 running on 8 feet of track? Well, I'll tell you why. That's what I see in the real world. When I'm out in a rural or even urban area and I'm looking trackside and I hear a rumbling GE or an EMD with a couple of cars rattling going by at 15 miles an hour, that's railroad to me. Like that, you know, I don't live in Nebraska or Southern California where I can see a 100-car train from one point, you know. So I see all my railroad within a city block. And you know, this layout is, I guess, a city block long, right? But this is all I see, you know, right? So when I come to this layout, and I don't even have to run trains to stare at it and enjoy it, right? That's kind of the philosophy behind the shelf layout. You know, or as some would say, TOMA. Like I know the NMRA has this term. I don't know if it's new, but TOMA, which means the one module approach, I believe. Joe Fugate has an interesting episode on that on the NMRA.org channel on YouTube. If you check it out, they got some good material there. But you know, I've been doing this kind of shelf layout since I was a kid. Like I wasn't part of a club or anything, but you know, it didn't match with anybody else's. But I modeled this way since I was a teenager. So it's not a new concept, although people want to maybe revive it or push it more. So a term like Toma, like I get that, I really understand that. And Joe Fugate, he has a really neat approach. I encourage you to watch that. Maybe I'll leave a link down below. And it's a neat philosophy, like the way he shares it and discusses it. And you know, he's a respected modeler, right? He's been in the game for a long time, so you know he deserves respect. You know. So anyway, Toma, one module approach. Yeah, I believe that's what it means.